It's always a treat to get a chance to have a conversation with Tripp Lanier, the New Man podcast. Also, this book will make you dangerous, which I highly recommend that book as well. Tripp, that was a great read. So it's good to see you again, man.
No, good to reconnect with you, Corey. Thanks for having me.
So Tripp, just a chance to kind of catch up in some ways, and also let's dive in because you do a lot of work on just coaching people to get out of their own way, coaching people to see a framework that does give more energy to the way we attack life. Because I don't, one of the things I love the most about you, Tripp, is you're not a guy that's going to sit here and say, hey, we'll do 1, 2, 3, right? It's like, here's the formula. Instead, it's a, no, wait. Here's a dynamic, here's a framework, here's a lens. Now attack it that way, because that gives, and that resonates with me because that's the way I think as well. But when we talk about just men and women and how everyday issues we have, relationship issues we have, one thread that keeps coming up that I've seen you talk about in the past is the idea of procrastination. And we use the framework as a joke in our household of, yeah, put off till tomorrow what you could do today. That's a great strategy. Right. But what do you keep seeing that makes this topic so cumbersome and troublesome for people that maybe we're not even seeing in a good way?
There's a lot to be learn from procrastination. And I don't like to give, another term for it is resistance. Stephen Pressfield wrote The War of Art, and he talks about resistance in that regard. But it's a pretty nuanced conversation. And for a lot of us, it starts with, I should be doing X, Y, and Z. And I'm always curious, well, who is saying you should do X, Y, and Z? And if there's not any self-awareness or agency, autonomy around that, if that's not rooted in values, then I'd kind of like to hear from that procrastination. Maybe I'm going against something deeper than me. Now, if it means I need to brush my teeth, or I need to clean the kitchen, or I need to do the thing to keep the wheels on the track in terms of the basics and the necessity, the chores of life, just get after it. If there's a dragging or a procrastination to move into a bigger, newer area of our life, or maybe my relationship is the drag and I'm procrastinating about doing something there, I like to draw that out and understand that a bit, and at least give voice to the part that has a foot on the brake.
Okay. And I love that framework of the idea of a resistance in the shoulds, because I've heard two different things when it comes to the idea of shoulds. One is, love the phrase of why should all over yourself, right? And then the other is the should. This is where I've landed lately. When I use the word should, I'm basically saying something I'm not going to do.
What do you mean by that?
It's kind of it's like, I should be doing that. And it's almost like I'm giving myself an excuse that I won't go actually do it. But I'm going to live within this tension. Like you're describing the resistance. I'm going to live within this dynamic. And so I think that's where your statement of it's a very nuanced discussion absolutely applies.
Yeah. And, the way that I look at it is, I like to borrow from Richard Schwartz's IFS model, which is there are tons of parts of us that can be rooted in fears and needing to, attachments and needing to be somebody, or needing to be somebody to somebody else, or else this isn't going to work out. So it's just that whole framework of fear, not enough, needing to prove, needing to protect, needing to please. There's so many shoulds that get wrapped up in that. And we may never have taken the time to understand more of the big self, or more of the if our brain is a boardroom, I like to say, who's sitting at the head of the table. Most of the time, our fears are fighting for control. The guy in the morning is like, you know what, tonight I'm not going to eat ice cream. That's it. I'm going to work out today and eat ice cream, and not eat ice cream. And then 4 p.m, I'm going to blow off this. I should go to the gym. I'm not going to go to the gym. I'm just going to go hit the drive-through on the way home, and then sit in front of the couch. So that we're in this constant war with ourselves, and we're trying to battle ourselves, but we don't have a sense of a deeper sense of self. Like, what do I really want in my life? What do I really want for myself? What's an expression of myself? What's trying to live through me and as me? There's a much deeper conversation there. And if my life is just about meeting expectations or just about covering my butt or kissing butt or proving I'm not a jerk, something
Yep.
along those lines,
Yep.
I don't really have connection with that deeper calling or that deeper sense of self or that deeper connection to something that's larger to me than me.
Yeah. So
We just got to do
recognize.
it. I just want to acknowledge we went from, doing the dishes to something much bigger, but yeah.
Well, that's that's one of the things I love, man. It's just because it's most of the stuff that we fight about in marriage or fight about within ourselves are not the ways that tomatoes are cut, right? it's
Right.
it's something deeper because there's a script. I mean, this is where the language is almost interchangeable,
Mm-hmm.
because you could talk about the scripts, you could talk about the narratives, you could talk about the shoulds, you could talk about the parts, and man, there's so much overlap in all of that.
Right.
But the thing I love about this is what's it really not addressing though, which is the deeper parts, the identity, the agency, the worth or value as I determine it. And
Mm-hmm.
and so when you get a clarity of that, what are the ways you have found that are most effective to get more understanding of self, understanding of that deeper thing?
I think this is where we have to have space in our lives. And for a lot of us, if there's room on the calendar, we're just filling it up with things. Or even if
Yeah.
oh, great, I have 5 minutes, the phone opens up. And so there's not a lot of time for reflection. There's not a lot of time for listening. There's not a lot of time to really check in with self. And so even for those of us that might go to church or some kind of thing that is designed, the context is designed for us to
Right.
have a bigger sense of self. It still is largely governed about meeting the expectations of others, meeting the expectations of those in my community. But I really don't have a sense of who I am. My relationship with who I am is, who do I be so that others don't X me,
Right.
criticize me, judge me,
Right.
push me out, whatever those things are. So space is a big concern. Space to have connection with what is larger or bigger or something I'm a part of, not separate from, and just learning to listen and gosh, what is trying to speak through me or what is trying to get my attention, and learning to listen, but not give everything over to that, but learning to
Right.
build a trusting relationship with that where I can be informed by that. And then what happens is that might help me identify that stubborn adolescent in between my ears, or that 3-year-old that's like, I don't want to do anything. I just want to be on my Xbox, or I just want to play, or I don't want anybody telling me what to do, and realize that's not the person that I want running my marriage. That's not the
Right.
person I want governing how I treat my body and how my fitness or my business or any of those types of things. I start to recognize like, hey, I get you, little guy. We're going to have some fun. We're going to find some ways for you to be expressive and play, but you don't get to be the one that it has this much influence over the direction of these very, very important domains in my life.
Right. You're not the one that's at the head of the table in the boardroom that you're
Yeah,
describing.
but you're also not cast out. And I think
Right.
that's what typically happens is we cast out those parts of ourselves. We make them bad. We make them wrong. Ooh,
Yeah.
you want that. That's bad, wrong. So get out of here. And that tends to come back and bite us in the butt.
Oh, absolutely. Because that's that classic. The things that I avoid are the things that grow, and the
Mm,
things that I deny are the things that grow the fastest.
mm,
And so I'm
yeah.
not honoring some aspect. And so do you see it as, because what I'm thinking through with this Tripp is the shoulds incorporate that, but then also dismiss that part of ourselves. Right?
That's where
That's
we could be
almost
at
the
war.
right. Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. That's the war within us, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. That
If
it's
when I
the
do this thing, I'm disgusting. I don't like it when I do this thing, or I don't like it when I think this thing, or I don't like it when I desire this thing. That's bad or wrong.
right.
So now I'm going to try and squash it. And then nonetheless, there's still that desire or that impulse, or there's this part of me that I can't find, that I can't be with. And so this becomes our life is, don't be that thing. Well, I am this thing. Well, don't be that thing. I am this thing.
Right.
And what that
Right.
does is it takes what's larger than us out of the equation. We can't see anything else. We can't be with
Right.
anything else.
Okay. And so then we just get caught in, I mean, I guess almost it feels like in our weird brains, the path of least resistance will just be what other people think, because that's the less likely going to rock the boat, create waves. I can maybe attain what I'm really hoping.
I think it works for a while for some folks. And a lot of the
Sure.
people that I run into are the ones that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s and realizing I am dead inside.
Right.
I am a shell of a person.
Yeah.
I've disowned my sexuality. I've disowned anything that makes me feel alive. I've disowned, I'm with people. I'm with people a lot, but I still feel isolated. I don't feel seen for who I am. There's a lot of commonality in that, where they've prioritized the need for comfort and safety and belonging, but they haven't really dialed in to answer the question, who am I really? Who am I really? Which is different than who am I? Well, I'm the guy that's a dad and a business owner and this person and that person, and I fit in here. But the who am I really, the part underneath, doesn't get acknowledged.
Right. And what strikes me with that is, man, there's a tremendous fear associated with really asking that question legitimately.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you
Because
see
it's,
as the fear?
well, I see it as I have created this existence based largely in a system that was paint by numbers to start, right? That I do this, I do this, I jump through that hoop, I do this to be a good boy, to be respecting to this, to, all these kinds of things that are all parameters and structures of me operating in whatever system my family, my community, my culture is.
Right.
And then when I really reach this point of, wait, what if that's not all? What if there's something deeper?
Yeah.
I see the fear is largely, I just boarded a ship by myself and cast off from shore with no land in sight.
Mm.
Right, right. I am
Mm-hmm.
heading out into completely uncharted waters, and those waters are likely going to have some danger.
Essentially, we're talking about self-image here. We create this image of ourselves and we buy into it. This is who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's necessary. It's necessary to be part of a civil society
Yep.
to work through this stuff. It's not bad or wrong,
Right.
but nonetheless, that domestication can come at a cost if we don't reintegrate what the parts of us that would make us whole. So we've done all
Yeah.
this stuff to be domesticated and to fit in, and like, let's just get rid of these for a while because they're going to upset the system. They're going to rock the boat. We're going to push
Right.
those aside. But typically that's the thing that we can't be with. Those aspects of us that have been disowned are what would make us more whole and would actually bring that energy and that aliveness back to us. The fear, though,
Right.
is that if we start to acknowledge those and reintegrate those, they're going to take over. They're going to ruin everything. I'm going to go broke. I'm going to end up alone, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. It's just catastrophic thinking. But when in actuality, if we have skill and we can be an adult in the process, we can integrate aspects of ourselves, and it doesn't have to be disruptive.
Well, not. Let me challenge the word disruptive, because it's going to be disruptive,
Yeah,
but it's going to
great.
be
Maybe
positive. It's going to be more
catastrophic.
positive. Yeah,
Yeah,
catastrophic. It's
maybe.
going to be positive disruption more than anything, because this is the weird thing that comes to play, and how it's worked out in my life, how it works out in people I do masterminds with, and I'm going to posit I could speak for you in some regards, knowing the intricacies of how you work with men in a lot of ways too. Is, if deep down, kind of at our core as a man, I want to be accepted, I want to be valued, I want to be seen, I want to be loved. I mean, my shadow motivation is I want to be liked, I want to be thought of as funny, and thought of as smart. That's the three things that
Mm-hmm,
are. I still have that, man. That can easily wreak some havoc, because it becomes this, not from the core of me. It becomes this
mm-hmm,
identity that's pseudo and shallow. And what I found is, when I truly found a deeper core that I just started living, rather than me trying to read the perceptions to try to attain it, I started just trying to be it. And lo and behold, I started getting what I was hoping I would actually get, was being seen and being valued, because I presented something of value as I saw it.
I think the more that, at least in my experience, those areas that I thought were repulsive and unlovable, the more that I was in an environment where it was okay to be with them. And typically it was around others who could be with them, but I could not. My wife was this way. My men's group was this way. There were aspects of like, yeah, I still love you and you're still acceptable,
Right.
even though
Right.
you
Right.
may feel XYZ or think ABC about yourself, or you have a desire to do this other thing. And feeling seen and loved there, it it does a thing. It's like, well, wait, I always thought I would be annihilated here. I always thought like this was where everything's scorched earth. If you really knew this about me, you would not love
Right.
me. You would not accept me. And so being seen there and being loved there helps us heal that, helps us integrate it. And then we get to reclaim that energy. But
Yeah.
if we're part of a community that is like colluding in this, which is like, no, we
Yeah.
don't do that. We push that stuff down. Then yeah, we might find that we're not going to be able to experience that wholeness because we continue to get the message that you're loved as long as you're not these things.
Right. Right. And so that's where the dissonance then really can either be something that squashes us or it's fuel to truly start to own, who am I?
Right. Yeah.
And what
Does
do I
this
really believe?
right? And that's tough if we're in a domain that essentially is afraid of us being more of who answering that question. If we're in a
Right.
domain that is scared of the answer to that, could be a marriage, could be friendships, could be just our relationship. I've worked with people, their parents have been dead for years and they're still operating within that domain,
Right.
even though dad
Yeah.
and mom are not going to find out. It's like they're not showing up tomorrow to be like, we're really disappointed that you didn't keep that job, like,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. They're not casting dispersions from you when at the holidays with the underhanded comments that we
But
can so easily make to each other.
yeah, but it's still there. We still live in that world and it goes unexamined. So,
Yeah.
but most of the time, and maybe you find this too, is like when I listen to somebody say, well, what would happen? And then what would happen? And then what would happen? We kind of follow it all the way down. And the person is able to hear themselves say what this terrible thing is, whatever the monster in the bed is. A lot of times they're just like, I can't believe I've neutered myself or I've
Yeah.
castrated myself, like, because of this. I'm strong. I'm stronger than that. Like they get it. They
Yep.
don't have, somebody doesn't have to tell them that.
Yeah. And that, to me, that's the whole work, isn't it? That's the power of when somebody truly is empowered as themselves to actually cast out into, what is this for me? What will this look like? What could this be? And you're just asking. This is why I love the Ted Lasso framework of, how do I get more curious about my own life and what's going on and
Mm-hmm.
what it could be, rather
Mm-hmm.
than it's doomed and destined to only be whatever it was I was taught or modeled or impressed upon by other people.
Yeah. The two words I keep on my desk is just, and this comes around, but accept and forgive. And I'm always listening within myself, always listening with others. Like, where is the edge of my acceptance and forgiveness?
Okay.
There's a line. Everybody's line is a little different. And probably I could be more accepting and forgiving of someone else than I can be of myself. Sometimes there's these distortions, but to me, that's the line of love. Like my love only goes so far.
Right.
I can only accept you and forgive you up to this point. And then beyond that, it's just like, well, okay, well, what would it take for me to love you and accept you and forgive you? Doesn't mean I don't have to set a boundary if there's
Right.
a behavior that I need to watch out for. But if I'm going to really listen to this message of love, then watch where I set a boundary, and
Right.
or watch where I put a limitation. Say love only goes so far.
Well, let's land there for a little bit, because this is one of those things that love. I think most of the people with the SMR Nation would see a value in. I'm called to love, right? That there's an element of love that is so profound and deep and meaningful, and yet some people I know will think boundaries don't apply, right? That love is just, I heard a phrase not too long ago. I think it's from Robert Bly on the Iron John book, where a boy will he'll turn the other cheek before he's felt the pain of the initial slap.
Mm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And because it's a diminishing, I don't want to be felt. And it's this, it's just this dynamic where we can go to extremes of love means I get walked all over or I forgive all the time,
Mm.
rather than, no, what you're describing here is a nuance within love that is so important to recognize by adding boundaries and teaching how I want to be taught, right?
Well, there's also love of self. So I can love and
Yes.
accept of others, but part of love and acceptance for me means you don't get to come into my house and with
Perfect.
that behavior. You don't get to be around my family. You don't get access to my wallet, my bank accounts, my car, but I can still have my heart open to you.
Right.
And maybe I can offer help or maybe I can offer support, but we're going to build trust here. And trust is
Okay.
earned. So
Okay.
I like to think of love and acceptance kind of like how our solar system works. It's all in balance. You ever see these things like, what would happen if the moon was closer to the earth and everything just goes crazy? Like it's catastrophic, right? It's in
Right.
this beautiful balance. So I like to ask the questions like, how far away, what distance would somebody have to be so that you could maintain an open heart with them?
Okay.
Because there's safety there. There's a
Yep.
balance there. Does that mean if you have an open heart that they're in your house 24/7, you have to do everything with them? No,
Right. Right.
right? So there's a balance here. And that's part of this co-creative process in relationship, which says if I want to be able to maintain an open heart with somebody, it might mean we only see each other at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And then
Fair.
we might be leaving early so I can
Right.
maintain that open heart. So I think that maybe that starts to answer the question, is that there's a balance here that a little bit might go a long way with some folks, and maybe a lot more can be worked with. But I
Yeah.
like that. What would it take for me to maintain an open heart with this person? And that may rub up against what we think that we should do in a relationship,
Well,
because relationships are
that's
supposed to look a certain way.
what comes to my mind, because what was modeled or taught was this is what a good, dutiful daughter or son does, right?
Oh, right.
That you don't call out mom's crazy. You don't call out dad's
Okay.
selfishness. You don't or nosiness or demanding. That's that script. That's the boardroom going on here, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's all the different parts of us going, wait, but hold on. Now I got this dissonance because the message I received loud and clear was, we don't bring that subject up because mom can't handle it, or dad will lose it, or he's so opinionated there's no other option. Right? I mean,
Right.
the political climate we're in is a great example of, nope, this is
Yeah.
one thing I'm not going to discuss with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I want, because that's that dynamic that's so fascinating to me, to where we go to inordinate lengths to try to control our environment when we can't.
Mm.
But I can control myself within that environment better, which is the more powerful me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I might say, what helps me stay open and loving. I might not use these words with that person, but I can just feel it. Am I feeling myself contract or
Right.
not? I notice when we go down this road and we start interacting in this way, I want to withdraw or contract, or I want to attack, or I want to
Right.
change you. I'm the one that's now being the
Right.
perpetrator. So I feel justified. You're wrong and I need to be right. Oh,
Right.
interesting. Okay. No more
Uh-huh.
open heart. Right. So there's a lot of nuance here, but just noticing what dynamic do I want to take in to this relationship, in this dynamic, into this relationship. And if it's a friendship, it's one thing. If my job is to be a parent or my job is to be a husband or wife, then those roles are a little different there. But again, the same thing is required. It doesn't mean that we always
Right.
avoid stuff, but it would
No.
be that we're skillful. Hey, we do need to have a conversation about this, the choices you're making and the impact it's having on me and the rest of the house. When can we do that?
Right. Okay. And then let me add, here's what I'm hearing you say, Tripp, because I would add a caveat to it in some regards within this nuance is, sometimes it's not necessarily going to be a conversation. It's going to be just setting out the clarity of, you know what, this is one of those things I feel like I continually get sucked in on, and I don't want to be that. And so
Yeah.
therefore it's like, I don't need your buy-in to withhold, to hold my boundary here. Because that's,
Yeah.
I think most people lose the idea of the power of boundaries because they think, oh, well, people will respect them and people will
Yeah, and I
honor
think I
them.
think also boundaries means I need to change you or you need to change.
Right. No, not at
Good luck.
all.
Yeah. So
Right,
if I find myself
exactly.
needing the other person to change, what if they never changed? Well,
Right.
how could I interact with that person if they never ever changed?
Hmm.
That would allow me to be more open hearted. Maybe we're not in relationship anymore. And I don't know how many marriages or
Absolutely.
relationships are started from, I think you could be this other person and that's who I'm in love with, versus
Right.
this is who you are. And so the
Right.
whole thing is you're not enough as you are. You're not really lovable as you are, but if you would just be this other person, it'd be fantastic. And it's like, good luck.
Yeah, that's we've had the mantra the last probably year or so with a lot of our shows is the goal becomes dealing with the spouse I've got, not the one I wish I have. And
Yeah.
because it's those maps in our head, it's those I wishes, I shoulds, if onlys, all of those things that I've
Mm-hmm.
bought in that help make up this ideal person, which, spoiler alert, even if I got the ideal person, it still wouldn't be ideal. Uh,
Hmm.
just
Yeah.
because I'm involved.
Yeah. Right.
So,
Yeah.
that reminds me of one of my very first clients was a older lady that she was on her fifth relationship and fifth marriage, and she was like, "I need help. Uh, why do I keep finding bad men? I'm a bad picker."
Hmm.
And I just immediately was like, "Well, maybe it's you. Maybe you're the common denominator."
Think
And
so.
she kind of took it back real quick, and then she looked at me and goes, "I like you. Let's keep going." I'm like, "Perfect. Let's," because she
Yeah.
caught it right. It's like, wait,
Yeah.
I spend so much energy on this external rather than what's being exposed that I need to get better. That's the core of me. This
Hmm.
resistance, like we started with, this element of this tension. What what do I do that honors this better side of it rather than these made up maps that I'm still holding on to? That's a tradition that's not serving well
Yeah. And it's kind of one of the tells. I don't know if you do this with your people, but if I notice that someone wants to keep talking about somebody else, I notice that they're not taking responsibility for themselves. And so I may challenge them. I say, hey, for the rest of this conversation, I don't want you to mention the other person at all. Let's make
anymore.
this about your choice. You woke up this morning and you chose to be with this person. Again,
Yeah,
you made it
yeah,
yesterday. You made it the day before. So you continue to be a part of this. And that's usually what they're not willing to be with.
exactly.
But if we can come back to what they're responsible for and their choices, ultimately that's where we can find that agency that we were talking about.
Right, and then you really start bringing into the two words you're describing of accept and forgive. How is there room for both of you in this? What does life look like? Because I think a lot of times we go to an extreme of the people pleasing continuum
Mm-hmm.
because we're trying to get something usually
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
avoid something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm not looking. There's no power there really. It's all
Right.
on the onus is on other people
Right. It's
rather than
transactional.
I pull it back to I can still be pleasing and respectful. This is the one that keeps coming up in my mind and in my world too. Tripp is I've landed on I've got aging parents and my goals is I'm going to stay involved. Right, I'm going to involve myself because I want to ensure they have dignity and they know they're cared for.
Mm.
Right, as things go along. Unfortunately, they're independent and they're great, but one of the phrases I came across early on in this journey was I am responsible to my parents, not how they think I am responsible to them.
Mm. Or responsible how they feel. That feels tough. Like, how do you have them
True.
feel that they have dignity or that, you know what I mean? It's like, whew,
Yeah.
that's really tough.
Yeah. All I can do is try to help create an environment to make sure some things are being attended to and being watched out for. But, I think a lot of times we carry, like you were talking about the 3-year-old and then the adolescent, those, those people in parts within us to me have this script of you should, right? It's this because that's what's kind of the hierarchy here of Well, you
Yeah.
should honor mom this way. You should, because I said so. All of those phrases
Yeah.
that I carry forward. And so now what flipped it for me was seeing it as no, no, no. Me being involved means this as I see it. So if they call and say, why aren't you ever around? I can say, I am around as much as I see I can be, need to be. And
Mm-hmm.
we're going to live within this dissonance then.
Right. I mean, essentially, you're talking about moving from the drama triangle where there's a villain, a victim, and a hero. And if
Yep.
this person's unhappy, I'm the bad guy.
Yep.
The only way I'm responsible for this person being happy, right? And this is
Right.
all co-created. And only 99% of the population is living within this dynamic, okay?
Right.
What I heard you say was like, I'm not responsible for your happiness. My choice is to participate with this in this way, but I also see you, mom or dad, as responsible for your well-being and happiness. And I can be a supporter of that. I can contribute to that, but I can't be responsible for that.
Right.
And but if you're not aware of that dynamic in the relationship, then we're always in these bargains and we're always in these transactions where it's like, I'm somehow responsible for their happiness, but you're also responsible for mine. And then we're unhappy and then we're blaming the other person and there's nothing I can do about it. Poor me. And what a terrible, terrible place. Right.
Well, that I call that the tyranny of the lowest common denominator.
It's really tough.
It just really puts this weight on both, and we don't even recognize it because I think it's coming from goodness, right? But I'm wanting, well, hold on, no, it's really not because there's no me there, really.
Right. And I think it can be really beautiful from an acceptance and forgiveness place, which is you're not happy, and I'm not happy, and nobody here has to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
What happens when we take personal responsibility for our happiness and our own well-being, and then maybe we can be a team on that? Maybe we can support one another in that, or maybe it's obvious that we're not a very good team anymore and we should move on.
Yeah.
But nobody has to be the bad guy. And I think that then there's a way that we can work on these things together instead of build a case against one another, tear each other up.
And that's we spend a whole lot of time sometimes in courtrooms in our own mind and our soul
with the people we love. Exactly.
Yeah, that's that phrase of how I treat strangers and my neighbors so much better than I do the people in my house.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating world that we all live within, and just tangle up even more with how we orient towards it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Well, man, this has been a treat. How can people find you and your book and the show and just all that you're doing, man?
Yeah, well, they can find out about the work that I do at tripplanier.com. And then This Book Will Make You Dangerous is on Amazon. It's all around the world. You can check that out. And then the New Man podcast is available wherever anybody checks out their podcasts.
Right. And I highly recommend them all because you're one of the ones I regularly am checking in on the show. Read the book when it first came out. So it's good. It's on my list of handing out to people. So
thanks so much.
Collaborate with you. Absolutely, man. Well, thank you so much, man. And
thanks, Corey.
It's great
Always a
connection.
pleasure.